Hello, I'm Donna from Friends of the Earth, and welcome back to my monthly blog. This week I want to talk about the autumn statement, which we had last week. This is where George Osborne sets out, now twice a year, the economic policies and direction of the country. And that's why this blog is called George Osborne's Christmas Gifts. However, unfortunately, the gifts mainly seem to be for fossil fuel companies, and nothing very much was done either for the environment or for people who are struggling to pay their energy bills, which is now around a quarter of Britain's households. In fact, George Osborne seems to be almost like a reverse Robin Hood for the fossil fuel industry. Can I start again, actually? I don't think this is going very well.
I thought it was pretty good. What did
Hi, I'm Donna, a campaigner at Friends of the Earth, and this is the second of my monthly blogs. This month I want to talk to you about the Autumn Statement which we had last week. This is where George Osborne sets out the economic direction and policies for the next 6 months to a year for the country. And that's why I've called this blog George Osborne's Christmas Gifts. However, unfortunately, there weren't really very many gifts for the majority of the British population, although there were quite a few for his buddies in the fracking industry. So last week we were all sitting around in the Friends of the Earth office anxiously with the television on, waiting to hear what George Osborne was going to say. Twitter at the ready. But the thing was, we pretty much already knew what he was going to say on the environment because most of it had been leaked out over the past few days. And one of Hi there, I'm Donna, I'm a campaigner at Friends of the Earth, and welcome to my monthly video blog. This month I want to talk about George Osborne's Autumn Statement, which we had last week, which is where he sets out the economic direction for the country. It's why I've called this blog George Osborne's Christmas Gifts. Unfortunately, those gifts seemed mainly to be for the fossil fuel industry, specifically the fracking companies, and not things that actually were going to help the majority of the population. So, as is usual in the Friends of the Earth offices, when we have a big event like the Autumn Statement or the budget, we had the television on our third floor and a group of us sitting around it waiting to hear what George Osborne was going to say to us this time. In this particular instance, though, we pretty much had most of the news already because it had all been leaked out over the past few days. And so something that we were expecting to come, but I think is one of the most scandalous things that happened in George Osborne's statement, is cuts to a programme to support energy efficiency measures in people's homes. Things like getting insulation, which, whether or not it's in kind of loft insulation or for insulation for older properties. But essentially that programme exists as an obligation on energy companies to insulate a certain number of people's homes. And in all the flurry and scandal that there's been around these so-called green levies, which are environmental and social policies that are funded through bills, the government has actually ended up cutting the one policy that is actually designed to reduce people's energy bills. Now this is absolutely outrageous. When you look at people's energy bills, there are now a quarter of households in Britain that are spending more than 10% of their income on just paying their energy bills. We've had energy bills just being put up again over this winter. And we know that the main reasons for that are from rising gas prices, which are the main contributing factor to this, and rising profits. Yet it's energy efficiency measures that George Osborne chooses to attack. And what's even more upsetting about this is that the other thing that came out last week was a figure called winter deaths, and this basically sets out how many people die prematurely every winter because essentially of factors related to the fact that it's winter, like cold weather. And about a third of these premature deaths are because people live in a cold home. So what we found out is that last year 9,300 people died early in Britain because they live in a cold home in Britain. This is a much higher number than in much colder places like Scandinavia, for example, and that is largely because of our housing stock is such a bad quality and poorly insulated. Now, of course, what the government likes to tell you is that there is no money, but the other half of the autumn statement equation is that fracking companies were given a massive tax break, having reduced almost by half taxes that they have to pay on some of their early projects. So there's obviously money to be found for that. It almost seems in some way like George Osborne is some kind of reverse Robin Hood for the fossil fuel industry. So we were pretty disappointed, it goes without saying, at Friends of the Earth with the autumn statement, which basically saw George Osborne putting fossil fuels at the centre of his economic vision. Not only is this terrible for climate change, it's not very good for people's energy bills, and it sends a really bad signal when we are trying to negotiate a global deal to get everyone to agree to a set of carbon emissions that we need to keep under in order to stop dangerous climate change. And we recently had talks that didn't go very well in that regard in Warsaw and Poland. And so we're very worried about the message that Britain is sending about our future economic direction. Now, given that energy efficiency is the most is the cheapest way of reducing people's energy bills, is the most environmental way of doing it, it's quick and effective, what we want to know is why is not more political attention being paid to this? The average home that's struggling to pay their bills, if they had a package of energy efficiency measures done, could save around £300. We're going to be pushing for this over the next few months as people continue to struggle to pay their bills all through winter, for all parties to commit to a massive national energy efficiency programme to super insulate every home that is suffering from being in fuel poverty and struggling to pay their bills. What I wanted to ask you was, have you had energy efficiency work to insulate your house done yourself? If so, what was it that made you do it? And if you've not had it done, what is it that is stopping you? And what's in the way? Because we know that the government needs to do a lot more to help people to take out this kind of measure, and we'd like to hear from you about what will make the difference for you. Until next month, have a very Merry Christmas.
If you move yourself back a bit and just turn yourself to me a little, and then look to the camera, I think we've actually got a nicer sort of light there than if you now move further towards the screen, you'll probably see what I'm talking about, and turn back to where you were, flat onto the screen. Can you see how it just, your whole face is not lit really there, it's all in the background. So if you just turn into that light, you've got a nicer sort of, it's a bit more flattering light than just that sort of flat darkness in front of you.
I don't really know what you're talking about, but I trust you.
Okay. We'll give it a go like this. And also, I think if you're sitting back a bit, I think you will rely a little bit on your notes as well, knowing that as long as you've got everything where you know you can see it if you need to. But if you're leaning back, I think you'd be less inclined to lean over the desk and look more at the remote.
Yeah, I think part of the problem was I don't know where I just put them. Oh, that's where I turned that over and then.
So if you got, is everything you need? It would be good if you could get everything you need without having to move it.
Yeah. Yes. I'm gonna basically try and do it without notes at all.
Okay.
But I'm just gonna. Maybe the question I should ask, because it seemed a bit. If it just felt a bit boring. Should be something that's like more linking back to Christmas gifts.
Yeah, definitely. How would you link it though? That's the thing.
I don't know.
What would you link it to?
What gift would you like from George Osborne for Christmas? I'll just stick to what it was, I think. got a meeting in 5 minutes.
Okay. I think it was fine anyway, to be honest.
Right, so you want me to sit here?
Yes.
Might take this jumper off.
It's good that you're wearing dark clothes, because otherwise I don't think we'd hardly be able to see anything of you. Because the camera sort of, your clothes mean the camera would think it's lighter than it is. It's too bright. I'm not gonna bother with it.
Hi, I'm Donna. I'm a campaigner at Friends of the Earth, and welcome to my monthly video blog. This month I want to talk about George Osborne's autumn statement, which happened last week. This is where one of the twice yearly times where he sets out the economic direction and policies for the country. And it's why I've called this month's blog George Osborne's Christmas Gifts, although in reality what was in that winter budget, as some people call it, was mainly gifts for his friends in the fossil fuel industry rather than things that would be helping the majority of people in Britain. So we were all sat round last week in the Friends of the Earth offices watching George Osborne give the speech, our sort of mobile phones ready to tweet anything that he might say, waiting for what was going to happen. But the truth was, we actually already had a pretty good idea from things that had been leaked out into the press or dripped out of government over the few days before, and it wasn't a very pretty picture, as well as the fun things that we'll all enjoy, like working till we're 70 or having more cuts to our public services. One of the more appalling things from an environmental as well as a social justice point of view that George Osborne announced was cuts to a programme called the Energy Company Obligation, which is something that requires the big six energy companies to insulate a certain number of homes. Now, insulating homes reduces people's energy bills, it cuts carbon emissions as well, and it also could potentially create up to about 130,000 new jobs in Britain, which I'm sure most people will agree are sorely needed. However, as some of you might have noticed, there's been quite a lot of stuff in the media about so-called green levies, essentially environmental and social programmes that are funded through people's energy bills. And the government, unfortunately, and the Tories especially, have been seeking to blame recent bill price rises on these so-called green levies, when their own independent advisors have said that actually the fundamental reason is the increasing and rising cost of gas. Increasing profits obviously have been playing a role as well. So we ended up in this rather ridiculous situation where what was announced in order to reduce energy bills was cutting the only policy that's actually designed to reduce energy bills. Now, the net consequence of that is that there will be, on the energy companies, yes, they will have to insulate 120,000 fewer homes between now and 2015 than they otherwise would have. Now this, in our view, is pretty scandalous. It shows that George Osborne really doesn't really have much care at all for the quarter of households that are now struggling to pay their energy bills. But even worse than that, the other announcement from last week was on how many so-called winter deaths there were last year. Winter deaths statistic, and unfortunately it is a statistic, is on how many people died prematurely because of cold weather. And about a third of winter deaths are thought to be attributed to people living in a cold home, a home that they can't afford to heat. And so we found out that last year 9,300 people died prematurely from living in a cold home and from the effects of that on their health in Britain. Now, this is much higher than in Scandinavia and other countries that are much colder, and the main reason for that is we have a very poor quality housing stock that is not insulated, and yet George Osborne is choosing the week after finding that out to cut this programme. Now, of course, what he likes to tell us, along with everyone else, is that there is no money, but there was something in George Osborne's Santa goodie bag that will probably cost us a little bit of money, and that was a tax break for fracking companies who are having their rate of tax cut by more than half. And this is from a government that spent last year already, not even including that, £2 billion on tax breaks for the fossil fuel industry. I think someone maybe needs to revisit their priorities. Now, of course, the other way that you could fund energy efficiency measures to insulate people's homes is by doing exactly what we're calling for in coalition with a whole bunch of other organisations. I think there's about 200 now, including health groups and poverty groups and children's groups. And we've all got together and we've done a campaign called the Energy Bill Revolution, which we're working on at the moment. And that's calling for carbon taxes, which are going to be worth 63 billion to be spent on energy efficiency and making people's homes more affordable to heat and warmer over the winter. Because energy efficiency is really the only long-term solution to bringing people's bills down. The average home, if you kind of got a package of insulation measures in it, you'd save about £300 from your energy bill. So what I wanted to just end by asking everybody is, have you actually had any energy efficiency measures done yourself? And what was it that made you do it? Because we know that while this is the cheapest and easiest and most effective way to reduce carbon emissions as well as energy bills, not that many people have done it. And we want to know from those of you who haven't yet got around to doing that, what is it that's standing in your way? Because we know that government needs to provide a lot more support and especially some money to help people and especially the vulnerable to do that. So I look forward to hearing your answers on that, and until then, have a very Merry Christmas, and I hope that your energy bills are not too high.